Okay. Might as well cut that short. Oh, good morning, good afternoon. How you doing? Oh, okay. Playing some funky C++. Doing good. As long as you're having fun with it, that's what matters. Right? I've been trying to figure out what comes next in this platform thing. Kind of reviewing the viewership numbers, the likes and stuff on videos to see if there's a clear pattern or if there's a preference for certain things. So far, there is no pattern. The only video that I've had dislikes on was the first video for the water. The first video had 2 dislikes. Other than that, little engagement. So the viewership numbers are balanced. So I'm trying to figure out if there's more interest in me doing more of the watering water and less of this on stream, or vice versa. Dota, good morning. How you doing? Yeah, the notifications in Discord are less necessary since you have a regular schedule now. Yeah. I was hoping that would be the case. Yeah. Or use a bot. I always forget the notifications. Yeah. Just want to make sure there's people that rely upon being notified rather than using the fact that I'm scheduled to stream. Notification was what brought me to that. Nice. Yeah, again. It's funny, I think the grind of streaming is simpler if you know what you're after. Like for me, I like the coding, right? So I like doing interesting stuff. When it's not interesting and I feel it, then I don't feel like streaming it, which is hard. Because obviously, if I'm streaming the reality of software, then I have to stream the bad as well as the good. But trying to figure out what people want is still something that because there's not many streams like mine. I keep looking. There is not many. Yeah, but I'd like to know that. I know that I've had comments and stuff that have said, this does help people, right? So people do find this useful. I know that. Sometimes it's just because it's a good place to come and hang out with other smart people, right? And have, the last couple of streams, we've had some really good, solid discussions, and I like that. But there's definitely not many streams like mine now. It used to be a lot more. And I've looked at all sorts of different times as well. There's a lot more game dev than anything else. So, majority is not many, yeah. Yeah, there's that peak about 3 to 4 years ago has kind of dropped off. I mean, you still have people like White Panther streaming, but, again, Yeah, you've got a balance. Like if they're doing dev, they're doing quirky platforms, or their stream is not advanced. I mean, there's a few big ones. The Dev Dad, he's doing a platform, and he's just streaming. Hey, I'm doing this, and he's being productive. Like, what, to do it the way I'm doing it is not usual. But yeah, well, that's why I focus so much on asking, about improvements and things I can do and change, etc. Because I want to make sure that the content is useful for everyone else. Number of streamers that we'll call corporate devs is even fewer than like the regular devs. Yeah, I do also appreciate the streamers making their own game engine. Those streams are very different for you compared to your average Unity stream. Have you watched Dino Dini, Borolf? Dino Dini Nugget. Dino Dini Nugget. Can't believe I've not asked you this sooner. So, he is the creator of one of my favorite football games from my childhood on the Amiga. He's been doing development a long time. So that's why it dawned on me all of a sudden. I'm like, of all the people that you just said game engine stuff, but game engine stuff it's kind of like this, right? There's a lot of stuff that I'm going to have to do before I even get to something that looks visual, which turns people away because there's a lot of people that want entertainment, right? Hey, sir, how are you doing? How are the energies today? Energy's good, I think. How about you? Woke up at 5 a.m. I've been up since... I woke up at 3:30 because the dogs were going crazy. I went back to bed at 10 to 4, and I got woken up at 20 past 4, and I've been up since, so... And then I get to do karate class tonight, so that's going to be interesting. We're going to get till 8 o'clock tonight. Maybe this is what I do now. The key is using that time. If you're going to be up and awake, use the time productively. Don't sit there watching videos on your phone. Not that I would do that, of course. Okay, what are we doing today? So we are back on Agile Platform. Some stuff I need to get done. So I got the planning item stuff worked on. So the planning item now is authenticated. So I validated that works, and it captures who created the ticket, right? I then had an item, right? I had this item, right? As a product manager, I want to see a list of planning items. And then I thought more, right? I kind of added a comment. There's no value in getting a list of items at this point, right? There's absolutely no value. In the tickets, that was there to prove the system out. It was there to prototype, to demonstrate the usage. Didn't have any value. There is no value right now in listing tickets because there's a whole lot of rules that go with that. The same thing applies to planning items. So my focus has to shift to moving towards making sure I can do that promotion action. But I realized I had identified a little bit of having the earphones in is good because it feels weird talking when you're just talking to yourself. But I added the rubber thing back on the earphone. It's messing with it's muffling it too much, and it's making me self-conscious. So hold on. I'm gonna try something. Okay. went to bed at 3 in the morning and woke up at 9 in the morning. How come? This is a very good project. This project will great. Well, that's the goal, right? The goal is for it to be something big. What I realized is I was talking to Tick the other day. He's like, your platform stuff's massive. I was like, yeah, it's not that big. Oh, there we go. There's a balance. And then I realized that I'm at 35 projects in the solution so far, and I'm nowhere near anything productive. So yeah, this is going to get pretty big, right? Now, I would imagine at some point the solution will be broken up into multiple things, right? But yeah, I think I need to stay focused on this. Yeah. So, okay. So what I'm going to try and do as well, I mean, Rolf, I know that you've identified that it's harder to pay attention to this stuff, whereas with the drink water stuff, it's much easier. Because you can see the code, you can follow along, there's less of it, and there's more context. So I don't know how to change the stream, but I do know I need to stay productive on this stuff, right? So I think I'm going to have to figure out at some point some diagrams as well. So talking of that, right? The number of projects may be high, but there's a clean architecture. I need to start thinking about how do I document this system, because it's getting to that point where it's a little big. But the focus of right at the second. So I realized there was a hole, right? So I realized that I was going to work on something that was useless because there was no benefit to it. It was just going to be doing something they could do. But then I realized, obviously, the other day I was doing the planning items, and there's a hole in the fact that I don't attach who created a ticket, right? And I don't want to leave that out there as a. Okay, I'm going to bounce around a little bit. I apologize. So one of the challenges that I'm saying we face, right, is the fact that we have a lack of communication, right, and a lack of visibility into the process, into the system. And PMs put tickets in there, put stories in there, and they sit there and they work on whatever they need to work on. But they get busy, they go do something else. And the backlog is where stories go to die, right? So I look at this today. I'm like, how do I organize this? How do I prioritize this thing? Because I've got all this stuff. How do I keep a check on, is it relevant? Right? How do I review this as I go? And that's one of the things I need to kind of figure out. Right? Is it something that I can fix, or is it something that I just have to look at? How do I present it? Yeah, it's very hard to narrow down what's important and then how to prioritize the larger work. It's kind of draw. Yeah, so I think that in the near term, I will have to start mapping out all these dependencies. So we have, minimize the work on what is important as well. Yeah. Hold on. So I did something like this the other day. Right. I minimize the work on what is important as well. I mean, there's a constant issue in development of infinite work. Yeah. This kind of highlights only a little bit, right? And I actually lost the other one. I need to make sure I have either cloud saves on or whatever. Maybe I use a different product. But I do need to start documenting these pieces out and look at the workflows, because even if you look at what I've got now, right, and where I'm about to go. So we'll get to this piece in a second, but we have tickets and planning items and tenants right now. Teams is kind of, that's got to come very soon. I've got to talk about what teams, because again, the list doesn't mean anything independently, right? Because the list is just a list of things. I'm working right now as if I've only got one list of work, right? So teams is going to be the organization that adds in an extra level, an extra set of organization there. But I've already got these messages that are now bouncing around. I need to add in the concepts into this system. Anyway, good morning. Hope you're well. So, I've already got a complex system, or a complex set of systems that I'm going to have to start mapping. Otherwise, I'm just going to be bouncing around randomly adding code, and that waterfall approach will just cost me in the long term, right? So I think my goal has to be, I have to focus on getting this product to a place where I can consume it, right? So I don't have to use other tools. That has to be my first priority, right? So whatever I need to get it to that place, I need to focus on that work. From there, I can identify usability problems. I can identify gaps. I disagree with not building a UI first and just working on the API. Okay. Also, I'm sure you're following that up. I think it's a lot easier to build through the UI. That's how the customer interacts with it. Well, the infrastructure will work itself after that. Again, different perspectives. How can you see the product through the API? You can't, right? But okay, so I've been in a situation many times where I've got a front end and it's backed by an API of sorts, and then I've been asked, hey, can we just provide access to the customer? Right? The API doesn't work that way. Right? The API is very much bound to the way that you're presenting the information. So I didn't want to start with the UI because the UI will drive me in a specific direction that I don't necessarily know if I like. Also, UI is my weakest area, right? So from a productivity perspective, if I can get a lot of structure in place and a lot of behaviors in place, then tinkering with the UI is not going to hurt as much, right? And I can identify those gaps, right? And actually validate those decisions rather than just knee-jerk reaction. The product definition is essentially the UI. Yes. I agree. I don't disagree with that statement. I cannot build this. I mean, I call it platform because right now that's what it is. It's a platform. You could build whatever UI you want on it, right? And yeah, the more I produce, the more I realize the fact that I can't go infinitely long just developing the platform, right? I have to develop the UI. What will be the measure there is, can I stay strict on my own rules there and say, hey, am I changing this to meet the UI need, or am I changing this to meet my need as an actual platform, and keep it that way? Because the UI is obviously the one thing that you need to refresh more often, right? Because the UI standards change, libraries change, the challenges change a lot in terms of what you're presenting. If I can make it so that I don't have to change the back end at all, but I can put a complete refresh on this, I think that's a benefit, right? So hence why my strong focus on API first. And you've been around here long enough. Do you want to see me struggling with the UI? How many streams am I going to have of just struggling to get something to work properly, or how to get controls in place properly, or picking the wrong library? It's not my strong suit. So my hope is that maybe I can. Never did find that slide, by the way. The one that I was thinking about. I mean, you could make it prototype like, right? I could. But what does a prototype look like, right? I've got to decide where do I stop, right? So I think right now I need to focus on getting the relevant components in, the workflows. So similar to, right, this, I need this kind of workflow, right? If I can produce this workflow, even like notes and stuff don't really matter, but if I can produce the workflow of, hey, a ticket can be promoted to a planning item can be promoted to a story, the status can be updated on these things, then I can worry about a UI, right? Because I've got the blocks in place for that. Because then things like notifications don't mean anything if there's no app, right? One thing I've been contemplating as well is this sign, right? So if we have, doesn't that look right? Why does that look so squishy? There you go. That's better. Oh. If we have these databases, right, then something like this. Oh. Yeah. So creating a view, like producing data into one central repository and using that purely as read. And that's a primary reason why I would avoid UI until later on, because I want to see if that's an actual viable option. Because one of the things I often do is I end up building these APIs and then you end up with a view concern that doesn't quite match. And if I build an API that is more a conglomeration of all the right data, then I might be able to make a GraphQL API that is very simple, and the UI on the client side is much quicker and easier. But I'm not sure how to approach that right this second. So I think having the components in place will help me achieve that. And again, the prototype nature then is driven off of, which is, yeah. So I'm going to start with. So I think the scenarios should come first. Scenarios determine the definitions and events. Afterwards, the relationships and the boundaries of these relationships should be determined. If I want to create a ticket, what do I need to do to the ticket? And what events will be triggered? Product manager create a ticket versus user. What is needed and what happens next? Yeah. So that's kind of where I'm focusing. And again, I suppose that comes from an experience perspective, right? I don't mean, I'm not, that's not a flex. That's more of my personal experience path, right? Rather than I've got a lot of experience. What I mean there is my working practices have often been left to my own devices, right? So maybe my nature is to go more towards getting things figured out in the back end before I worry about what the UI looks like, because I've seen what happens when UI churn happens, right? When people can't make up their minds. And I get your point, though, so I'm not discounting it. I think there is a point very soon where I have to move into that UI concerns. Because it will help me refine some of those workflows. I think I need the building blocks of the components in place to even start a UI. Iterate at work with the UX guy. He'll mock essentially a UI. We'll implement it, realize issues in the back. I think customer feedback is even trickier. Yeah. Right. And there you go. So being able to work with a UX person is a blessing, right? You find a good, smart UI UX person that knows how people use systems, has the right tooling to monitor, and maybe it's something we build into this, right? Maybe we build in some level of A/B testing into that, right? We have a look at what it means to do that, so we can actually prototype and switch between versions. I've seen it done where we release 2 versions of a page, and the load balancer just randomly hops people onto a different version, right? You've all seen it if you go to Amazon sometimes, or you go to Google Mail sometimes, it'll look different, and then all of a sudden it'll go back to how it was. And what they were doing is they were testing a new UI, right? So it's not uncommon. That's a lot of work as well. Like if you build like just the DB, the API, the UI, I think there's the wrong approach. And again, I think the balance you talked about, right? I think I've got to build enough of this to understand what I don't understand, right? Build enough of this that I have all the components of a workflow in place. So to S's point, making sure I understand those relationships, making sure I understand how data is going to work. Had I been building a UI from the start, I might have focused very differently on the person, right? Rather than the process. So I might be focused on one person adding things in and then seeing things, which might drive me in a bit of a different way. Off-topic rant. Our code base at work is funkying me, out-funkying me, and it scares me. Owning C pointers will be the cause of all my headache. Dear. The joys of a unmanaged language. So, yeah, I see the point. I definitely agree to some extent, Dota. I think the UI is not too far away from this. I think I have to do it. And I think that, like notifications doesn't have to be a part of this piece, right? Notifications can come post UI and start testing it and that feedback. I would hope that when I get this to a certain point, I can figure out deliverables, right? So I can figure out how do I actually deploy this system, and then can I ask you guys to log in and give it a tinker and see how you feel. That sort of stuff is something that I need to start preparing for. So pre-alpha testing is something that I have to prepare for, even though I'm a long way away from that. I still have to start thinking about what that looks like. Maybe I need to look at .NET Aspire, spend some time going off figuring out what that can do for me. Maybe I need to look at, cost-wise, Azure versus AWS versus Google, right? What can I do? What can I deploy? Where can I deploy it? Is there value in deploying it to my own little Kubernetes clusters at home? Doing it that way and figuring out that story, or do I suck it up and accept that I've got to find someone who can do that sort of stuff and pay them a little extra on the side to try and help me through those stages? And that's got to be something I've got to consider if I want to take the platform forward. I've got to be able to invest somewhat. So I just don't relish the idea of selling video games. I've got the money. So coming back, just back on this. I know now half an hour and I've not really got too much coding yet, but my point of of all this to start with was this, right? I'm already losing track of the work in here. I'm losing track of like what needs what and how it, and should I delete something? Should I remove something? Right? I have to continually review this. So moving to my own stuff, but my own idea here would be these would all have review dates on. So this would be sorted in, hey, you need to review this soon. So if I know I'm working on something, right? As a system user, I should know who created a ticket. That's the one I'm working on right now, right? The due date is now, right? As a product manager, I need to be able to promote tickets to planning items. The due date is, Sunday, right? I need to be able to do this pretty soon. As a product manager, I should be able to invoke an API that triggers a promotion for a ticket. That has to be done part of the other one. So that has to be done by Sunday. As a user, I should be able to see at a glance all the work assigned to me, right? That one has no relevance, right? That doesn't matter. I don't need this right this second, and I won't need this for a while because, again, to the point, right? That really only matters when I start to see things, right? So I don't need to worry about what can I see right now. I just need to worry about what can I capture. So am I missing something here? Delete. I can get rid of that one. I can clean this up. Review mediator validation. Has dependency on I validate for little to no reason. That is not relevant. Right. As a product owner, I want to track support tickets. So this is the extra piece. I need one more item here to be done with this. So let's say that has to be reviewed by. I'm going to use this as my review date, right? So that's why I'm trying to set them. So that's that story. So that has to be done by Sunday. This is irrelevant right now because we don't have any Couchbase pieces in this second. That will come back. Couchbase, I think, is definitely something I want to use. I just don't know how to use it effectively at this point. User verification should be updated once the user verifies. This needs to be reviewed tomorrow. As a product owner, I want to be able to register a user. That's technically done. That's done. Newly registered user should not be allowed to log in without being confirmed. That needs review. We're going to review that by next Sunday. That's when I want to be able to assign members to teams. So this again is now branching off into a new area of functionality. What does it mean to be a team? I need to discuss that. I need to think through that. This needs to be done, right? This isn't working. Putting hints like that in does not necessarily help me. Technically that's done. It's not quite complete in so much as it's kind of like an extension method that just says get user ID off the name. I should just use the identity and do it that way. So I need to review that next Wednesday. Hi, Connie. How are you doing? That's that one. Story writing AI integration. Let's remove that. I don't need something sat out there with a dream list, right? That's not an issue anymore because of the organization of data. Okay, so we've trimmed the backlog, right? We put review dates on things, right? We can sort things out. We know what's unresolved. Found a bug and normal work that I was looking for over one day. So yeah, fine. Nice. Productive. Okay, so this triggers a larger design problem, right? And this again will trigger yet more work. And this is, again, if I was doing the UI side of things, So one of the things you've got to be cautious of is I'm developing something that is not a small chunk of work. Anything I change right now has massive impact, right? So if I build more, I have to change more, right? So as a product owner, I want to be able to assign members to teams. Has knock-on impacts, right? What does it mean? What does a team mean, right? How does it work as an organizational unit, right? Now when I assign a ticket, a ticket I'm still considering being without boards, right? Just kind of representing them as Kanban, but they don't have a board necessarily. They only have one board per team, right? So there's a little bit of an organizational difference there. But then that team, what does it mean? How do you organize? How do you categorize, etc.? That has impact on every single component. So if I build out tickets, product, planning items, and stories, and then add teams in there as a concept, well, now I've got to produce the teams out to the rest of the system. I've got to then offer the option to select the team, right? And again, every single thing I do, I have to backtrack and change a lot of things. So the more I build without the components, the harder it is. If I had UI on that, well, now I don't have the UI for a team, but now I need to assign a team. So now I need to go back, modify all my queries, change yet more stuff. So I think what I need to do is on my own time, go through, kind of workshop out some of these items, build out actual workflows for individual systems, identify dependencies of the data, and then try and piece together some stories off of that. Yeah. So anyway, I added this ticket this morning. Well, I pulled it in, right? Because obviously working with planning items, I identified one of those needs, right? One of the exact things I was just talking about, right? I had missed the fact that I did not have who created something. It seems kind of fundamental, but because of the way I'm building it, it didn't matter. And even if I'd had a UI, it wouldn't have mattered, right? Because I'm not also then turning around and saying, hey, can I have this? So I was missing this piece. I was missing who created it. So I added it in. Right? So now if I go to tickets, endpoints, tickets, post, user identity, name, as user identifier, right? Actually, I think I want to change that a little bit. Public, static, period, get user. Is that right? That's the default. Oh, hold on. If that's null, how are we passing it as user identifier null not found? That doesn't even make sense as an error message. That's more appropriate. Huh? And then we can just do return. Right. So the use there would be user dot get user identifier. So Change principle, get user identifier. Yeah, that's what I want to do. So yeah, I want to make sure that I need to figure out a way of including YouTube. Or I'm getting views, but not actual anyone sticking around. I don't know if that's a challenge of the way that YouTube is, or what. But that just dawned on me. No, I'm all okay. Get user. Yeah, because I had I did that. So that can be private. I don't need to make that public now. That will break here, which is fine, because that means this is better now, because now I can do get user identifier, same way I do get tenant identifier. They're all the same thing, and planning items also change. Now the encapsulation of how I get that out of the user is all in one place. I don't have to worry about it. Post. So I considered it on the notes, by the way. I considered who was doing the note. Again, this stuff here was built to prototype. It wasn't necessarily me solving that problem of, I need, like, creating the list and stuff. I probably don't need this here. And to my point of design later, what I probably want to do is move all the data into a view model that I can then put a GraphQL API against, and therefore provide greater flexibility and kind of normalize everything out so that it is one big navigable data set. Will also improve the speed of the system. Because again, using the same data you use for storing the information, query the information, often comes with heavy costs because you end up adding indexes or optimizations for the query side of things that are not necessary if you're just kind of promoting that data out. Okay, so I promise we're going to get to this point. It's going to happen. Move, create, get user identifier, and move object for retrieving user ID. Right. Method. It was inconsistent anyway. That was a very behavior. Okay, so I have been following a pattern of writing my objects. Okay, if I go to the domain entities ticket, I've been kind of falling into this pattern of a static create method, right? So that there is no constructor, so you can't just construct an object and set all the parameters. This is a step towards the larger goal of really breaking this up. I still want to discuss with defaults on this piece. So I move this to a create. You can't now create a ticket just using the constructor. You have to use the method. The only way of setting things, what that does is it controls they added. It controls, other things. The status is now defaulted to pending. And that's fine. If you want to actually change the status to anything other than pending, you have to call update status is the goal, right? And yes, you can do it that way, but we'll get there. Apex, good morning. Hope you're well. Public properties and entity classes should be private set. I agree. But if I do that, I'll break the system. So, yes. I totally agree. I should control access to these things. So this entity is about its data, right? This object is pulled in through entity framework. So this data is serialized and deserialized into SQL or into whatever you want to do, right? If I remove the sets, entity framework can no longer touch it because these are all then private sets. There is a solution. I kind of covered it the other week, but it will it will mean a massive refactoring of everything. Right? Again, these are things that I want to work out sooner rather than later and get to so that they become a pattern. And I'm kind of putting it off here. I wanted to do this ticket and then tackle that. So the answer there is to, what you do is you say, okay, well, I can update the review date, right? I can assign a user, bullet void, assign to user, period, user identifier, right? I can do all these things, right? So I create all these methods that allow me to do things, and that way I can make all these private. That's what I should do, right? Update ticket details or whatever I want to change. Right? Things don't change. There's things that don't change, right? Once you've created it, it's against that tenant. If that story was to move to a different tenant, it won't make sense. So you can't do that. If I make it a public get set, that makes that possible. So what you do is you remove these. Code is going to break all over the place. And what you do is you create right? And then in here, you can do this because this is all private stuff anyway, right? So you do something like this. The problem with that is Entity Framework doesn't like that, right? Entity Framework then can't set these variables when it deserializes your object. You can't do it. So in Entity Framework, what you do is you configure model creating, right? You do something like model builder.entity ticket dot as if the p goes to p dot as field, do that, right? And that will mean that Entity Framework will bind to that private field. So when it's actually setting and getting the value, it updates that one. Which feels not ideal, but that's how you get around that problem. But as you can imagine, I've already got several dozen entities across the system, and lots of code that currently uses property getters setters. So I'm not in a rush to do it, but I'm going to have to do it soon. Right? It does allow me to if I do it that way, it does allow me to encapsulate that logic. The behavior of setting values is owned by the object itself. I can't set variables randomly, right? Because right now you can change the status and it'll never trigger the event. Right? You can change the review date, it'll never trigger the event if you do it through the property. So because now you could update something in different handlers. There could be knock-on effects of changing things. So, yeah. But anyway, that's just one problem. So that is one I'm going to fix. I'm going to go through that effort. I think it is worthwhile doing. I'm going to make sure I keep an eye on the dogs because if they start chewing things. curled up on the sofa together, not chewing it. Make sure I do that. So, I haven't said this in a while. Anyone joining the stream, anyone new to the stream, you are more than welcome to ask questions. You are more than welcome to stop and say, hey, could you just show me that, please? The aim of the stream is not necessarily about me being productive. I can do that off stream as well. I can write this code in my spare time. But if I can help understand something, or I can show a pattern, or I can do that, this code isn't very beginner friendly, but it doesn't mean that the stream isn't for all people of all skill levels. So if you sat there thinking, I want to ask something, please feel free. There's also a Discord. You're more than welcome to join, where you can go and ask further questions or follow up with things you've seen on the stream. Also, there's a coding challenge coming up next Friday. I'll be doing another one of them. If you have any interest, there is a poll in the coding challenges channel, and I've picked 3 at random again that seemed like they would be something that might challenge me enough that I wouldn't just be able to say, yeah, I know how to do this. I'd have to learn some things along the way. Yeah, feel free if you want to vote on those things. Okay, so we are now 50 minutes into a stream. I started with one goal, and I've yet to get there, so my apologies. So, here we go. Doing what I've just done, right? I've created this ticket. This ticket has this create method now, whereas previously it had a constructor. Now, in all these tests, I create a ticket. Right? So I'm saying, hey, when I ask for a ticket, give me this ticket, right? And I'm setting these values. But I can no longer control those things, right? So, when the ticket is updated, it doesn't create it, right? I'm looking for certain things, right? So when the assigned user is changed, so I've got to make sure that these tests still make sense when I change the style, right? I can't, this is where it gets difficult, because I've written the test in one way. I've now changed my code. Should I change my code to support the test, or the test to support the code? The reality is the test should be what is real. If I can't test it, then I've got to question why I can't test it, and what do I need to do in my test to make it pass, and still trust that the outcome is realistic, right? So if I do, right, just do it this way for right this second, just so we can, bar ticket equals ticket.create. So in this ticket.create, I do have a, I do not have a tenant identifier. How did I get away with that one? Oh, right, because I was setting the variable. It doesn't matter. The tenant identifier doesn't matter, this piece, right? So I was missing some documentation in my system just by that, right? I didn't have, nothing said I needed a tenant identifier. So if you were looking at this test to see how to use this thing, then yeah. I'm making them read only because you don't change them, right? These variables are protected. Font style read only doesn't really matter, but read only is consistent because I can use read only on GUIDs as well. So the code reads better. I'm starting to just reflect on how I'm writing the tests. So these original variables, right? and then the expected. This is what I'm expecting to see. So everything else doesn't change. And what I do need is private read-only period. This doesn't specifically matter, but it does matter for this now. So now I am actually documenting that I have to do that. So original customer name, original description, created by. I don't have that information, so now I've got to document that it is there. Private read-only period, original created by user identifier. Again, I'm not shortening that to ID. I'm differentiating ID versus identifier. ID is a table, a primary key on the tables. Identifier is a GUID that I share. I actually don't need ticket ID, so we'll get there in a second. So we have that. Now we have original assigned user identifier and original review date, right? Let's see if our test will pass. Other passes. Create, remove all that. Okay. We don't need a ticket. Well, we do need a ticket ID. This is an interesting one. Actually, no, can't do it that way. So, obviously by changing this up, I lose control of the fact that the ID is going to get set. The ID is going to get set by the database in the real code base, right? But it's not going to, I don't want to be able to control that, right? That's not something I want to document that I can control. It's not something that I should control because the actual system will deal with that identifier for me. From a testing perspective, it obviously gives me some challenge there because now I don't have a ticket ID, right? Which is why I deleted it to make sure. So what I'm expecting here is with these nulls, I should only update the assigned user, right? Nothing else should change is the goal of this. I'm verifying that this update does validate, okay, there's a null. I don't want to change the value of it. But I'm using the primary key because within the system, it will be okay to use the primary key. So, private read-only, int, ticket ID equals another one. Right, so ticket ID is there. The system won't build, that's the problem. Test, I can't run the test because the system won't build. So, shouldn't really do that with my tests, but it's the quickest way of making sure that I can validate the behavior. So obviously I've changed the behavior of the system. So the date added remains unchanged, right? So I was trying to control the date added. Now I don't have control of the date added, right? So this does not have any bearing anymore because I can't validate that. So, is within from UTC now, result not date added, and span dot from seconds 5. So I've created an extension method. This actually gives me a bit of a cleaner way because I can actually put a message there if I want to. This is actually assert.equal on date does exist. And you can give it precision. So if they're not exactly the same, it can fail. Here I'm just trying to compare the dates. So I'm tinkering with this, right? There are extension libraries, fluent assertion, definitely. would probably cover this. Or definitely would probably. Let me back that actual statement. That statement of maybe fact. The only reason I don't like using fluent assertions is because I don't like the word should. It might be kind of a silly reason at this point, but I just don't like seeing should in my code when I expect it does it actually achieves it. Yeah. So fluent assertions has a lot of functionality around dates. As we've covered before, right? If I actually need to control those dates, then a time provider would be the way to do it. Right? So inject a time provider and use that, and then I can actually control those times properly. But being that nothing I'm doing is particularly time sensitive right now, it's not like I need to control the time window, I need to verify UTC, etc., whatever. But at this point, as long as it has a date time within 5 seconds, fine. Interesting, I like should, but I use it interchangeably with is. Same concept to me. Yeah. It's just a should always comes with a, well, what if it doesn't? Right? It might not do, right? So the green on should, when it's red, it didn't do it. I don't know. It's a language thing for me. Should seems hopeful. And I'm going for confirm. Okay, so does this pass now? Okay, so our test now passed, right? Again, I'd not built anything specific of ticket ID, so what would happen was if I go and ask for any ticket, I give it back I set that value. I read it more of what should it be doing, but I see your point. Yeah, I mean, again, it's the sort of thing, if you were working on this project with me and we had a discussion that ended with, we should use fluent assertions, it does this, 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 and this, and we should change our wording to make sure that we're clear about what this is. As long as we agree and we can stay to a standard, I don't really hold enough of a bias to not give in on the point. Just I prefer not to see the word should. Yeah. So, the standard is what's most effective for the team, not what is most less egregious to me. And there's a lot of developers I've met that are like super opinionated, and I would doubt there are others in the stream that have not met opinionated developers. I may come across as one. I don't know, but the people that hate this and hate that and can't work like this and have to use their keyboard or have to use this text layout, and if they come to your computer, they'll change it. Right? Quirks are quirks, but you have to be flexible, and that's the way you work with a team. You don't work with a team by imparting your expectations on the team. Also, good morning. Oh, good morning. How are you doing? Hope you are well. Trying to be opinionated, but yeah, you have to be flexible and adapt. Down with you. Oh, my. I'm sorry to hear that, Amo. Hope you're feeling better. Hope you are resting and looking after yourself. So today I'm talking about unit testing with having changed the key design component of the tickets, what it means to have that knock-on impact, what it should do for testing, the challenges it poses, making sure that I'm not changing my code to adapt to my test. Well, you recover quickly. Never fun getting sick. I find it is more often newer developers who are very opinionated, though I've heard horror stories of very dogmatic senior devs too. This may be some kind of confirmation bias working against me here. So, I always remember one of the first couple of weeks I was streaming, someone joined the stream, like, you're old. Oh, what? Like, you're old. You're an old guy. What? How are you doing new stuff? Right? So, it was that assumption that because I'm a senior developer, right? Because I'm an older developer, which hurt because I was all of a sudden brought down to earth and realized, oh, I am a lot more experienced than a lot of people, right? Thank you for the follow, Fear. Welcome. Fear the unknown. Because I'm old, I therefore must be stuck in my ways and not wanting to learn new stuff. And I'm like, no. Right? So older developers do get this bad reputation because it's easy, right? Once you get, again, those people that do this for a job, right? Once you've got 10 plus years and you know what you're doing, so people assume that because I'm an older guy, that I'm not going to be as adaptable or as flexible with my opinions, and I don't feel that's necessary. I think it's kind of that. What's the word? Stereotype attached to aging developers that we are not able to do new things or not able to learn because why would we bother? We're earning more than the junior developer, and we don't have to work as hard because everything just comes easy. Right? Oh, 25 years. No, I still want to learn. I still want to do new things. I want to keep up to date with technology. Right? I'm now of the age where my age group is protected against, discrimination, but it doesn't mean, but it still comes with that assumption that I might not be as up to date as these kids coming out of college. So I have to work harder. The difference being between not being bothered to learn and actively being against the newer technology. Yeah, it's easy to say, oh, Go, fad, right? Or, X language or Python is just a fad, right? A lot of those languages have been around for a long time. They're just finding popularity because the way of coding has changed. Or they've been developed to solve different problems, right? I'm actually a big fan of Visual Studio. One of the things I want to do is have a go at building a Flutter version of the UI, right? I love this. I love Dart. I think it's really fun to use. From a developer standpoint, it gives me a lot of creative freedom to just drop things in there and see them work, and I love this, right? It's just something I don't know too much about and don't fancy learning too much of on stream, but it's something that I will do in the future. One of the UIs I would like to do is a Flutter UI for the drink water app, right? This is my game platform, by the way. It won't work because there's no API, so I've been learning this stuff. But again, fads. Is it a fad? I don't know. You don't know unless you try. So, download. That's this. So, always be open to new experiences. Yeah. Assumption that I am old, therefore I cannot learn new things. Yeah. And again, I know I mentioned that the streamer I was watching last week, he was tinkering with Rust, right? I went into Watch and I was like, how do you apply this? You know, the whole argument that you have to use the same technology stack for the entire product is a weaker one these days, I feel. Having specialist components for specialist pieces, I feel makes more sense, but that means you have to spread yourself a little thin, which is kind of why full stack what does full stack mean? Well, depends on the system, right? Full stack generally when it's in the job description normally means can work on the UI and can make it through to the database without actually having hand holding, right? That's what full stack normally means, or it means, hey, we don't have the money to hire all the right people, so you should be capable of doing everything, right? So full stack isn't quite where it was, but building this system, if I need to do something that's quicker or I need to do something that's very efficient or whatever, maybe C# isn't the right language for it. Maybe there is a better language or a better tooling that I can use for processing messages or notifications, etc. Maybe there's a library that sits better on a technology that works better. Should I discount it? No. But what I have to do is measure the cost to time ratio, right? I have to make sure that, okay, it's quicker, but I'm going to spend a lot longer learning it, and then I have to also maintain and become an expert in it. So, but it's not discounting it, right? That's kind of coming back around on that whole dogmatic senior devs. It's easy to stick with what you know. It's much harder to go beyond the bounds, but if you don't explore beyond the bounds, you can't truly say you've developed the perfect system. Rather that exists either. Full stack equals React plus C#. Yeah. Okay, so let's get these other tests uncommented now. Fix these up in the same way. So these are going to break for the exact same reason, right? We're going to do ticket.create. We lose control of that. We need a tenant identifier. Just I can't just copy and paste this. So I can copy and paste these two lines. It was just a I know. I wasn't taking it seriously, don't worry. We'll also use a chance to use the shared. So for those who haven't seen this before, I have a base class called arrange act. I don't like writing unit tests where I have all the arrange and act code inside of each unit test. My unit testing style is one of this, where I create an arrange method and I create an act method. In my arrange, I set up the case, the system under test. In the act, I actually pivot. I actually do the behavior I need to do. Need original tenant identifier, and we need customer name, and we need description, and we need created by user identifier, and we need signed user identifier. Oh. Review date. Yeah, anyone joining, you're more than welcome to ask any questions. If you have any opinions or thoughts you want to share, even if it's what we just talked about, Ed, feel free. The only wrong answer in the stream, I suppose, is saying someone else is wrong. Okay, so I'm going to move the expected outside of the originals. Right? So C# is bad. How's this moment? Okay. Rolf has a love-hate relationship with C#. He loves using it, but he's a C++ developer. Plus pluser. That sounds silly. Okay. Okay, so that test should still pass. No, it doesn't. Why does it not pass? It added remains unchanged. Again, I've got the same problem, right? So, is within from date time now. So I'm just saying, hey, time span dot. 1 second, it's 5. I know. I mean, C# has evolved, right? If you look at where C# was many years ago, right? I remember Link coming around. I remember the introduction of Link, and then trying to learn your way around it and what it meant for your regular day-to-day code. Very different world. Take close to again. I'm just being consistent here. I'm trying to be as consistent as I can. Original tenant, customer name, description, that goes there. Original created by, due date. Let's get rid of those constructor methods. Again, clearing that up. I think my biggest complaint with C# is a spotty cross-platform support, but this is getting better every year, it seems. Yeah, I mean, once they brought in the Xamarin group, C# really started to, I mean, .NET as a platform, they really explored that cross-platform. I think that might have been a requirement of Miguel de Icaza coming on board. So Miguel de Icaza used to work for what are they called? Very famous networking company. Not at all. Anyway, he used to work for a company. He implemented a .NET while working at that company, and then they in Unix, because he liked the language, he liked the platform, and Microsoft from the very beginning, same way Java is, made the open spec and actually made a thing that could be built using, like, .NET is a specification first. It's not an actual the .NET we use, the .NET framework or .NET Core, etc. is just Microsoft's implementation of that standard, right? It is. So he implemented it with that, and then broke out in his own company. And then when they brought them on board into Microsoft, that's when .NET really became cross-platform, right? And that work started on the .NET Core. .NET Core was a stripped-back version of the framework. Yeah. They've been getting much better. I use .NET on my Mac. I developed this on my Mac as well, right? So I have no issues with it. Mono Project has a big share here. The fact that .NET is currently open source and provides solutions to enterprise problems makes it unique. Yeah. It's Microsoft is lagging behind but doing a good job, except Blazor. That's defaults when you need him, and you need some good trolling. I don't know. The Blazor WebAssembly stuff we looked at with Water Drink Water yesterday. That looks pretty smooth, right? Yeah, it's still not a fan of Blazor. I don't think I'm going to get won over. It's still web form too. At the time, my biggest issue was the cross-platform support for frameworks like WPF, which I really enjoyed. Yeah, WPF, WCF, those were heavily tied to the platform. So it took them a while to get there. But they've been making the effort because people have asked for it, and open source. I was watching the .NET Aspire update yesterday with I can't remember the names. The creators of SignalR. They're kind of in charge of .NET Aspire, it seems, right now. Damien Edwards and yeah. One of us ran on. Either way, they were saying that community contributions on .NET Aspire have surprised them because actually, without too much documentation around certain things, people have actually fully implemented Kafka and MySQL control tools into .NET Aspire already. So the open source contributions are definitely getting heavier there, and people are finding them easy to work with. So, yeah. Aspire, though, I'm kind of torn in different ways in terms of where do I focus my energy right now. Obviously, I'm trying to build a platform. I'm trying to build something that is going to grow. But I don't know how to learn that stuff, and I don't know how to break off and do that stuff because I can't stream it. There's no way I can stream it because I don't understand how to stream it, right? So, and I don't mind struggling on stream. I do mind squirming and being completely out of my depth, and I've tried it before, and it takes all the energy out of the stream for me, so I can't do it. So that sort of stuff, I've got to kind of plan. How do I do that? When do I do that? Where do I focus that time? So, but it is something I'd like to learn more about. Blazor is great. Just accept it. It will take over any day now. I've grips over Aspire. It makes the dev way easier, but I think it's going to lead a very bloated infra. Yeah, that's my concern. It looks like if I tie it into Aspire, can I untie it very quickly? So far, I don't think that looks like the case. I'd be more interested in your route of Pulumi sort of path. How do I do that? How do we do infra as code? Infra as code. And Mr. Anhorn has been developing a game platform for several years. Power-based game platform. And there's a lot of the infrastructure pieces that I would love to understand. Definitely worth a follow. Okay, let's move forward. So I'm going to run it. I'm going to get the same failure on the date, right? That's expected. That proves that is the only failure and nothing else is breaking. Right? I hope we're not going to get into any actual debates about really what is good and is not, but is within from my My method might not be the smartest name there, but using fluent assertions. Okay, so again, just moving forward with this test. Okay, make the same change again. Put them in there. Don't need that one anymore, that's good. If I was being smart, what I would have done by now is actually committed this. But hey, why be smart? You can be quick. Everything has its place, and I find Blazor Wazoo is really good when you want an extensible front end to go with your back end. Yeah, I kind of think that working with the WebAssembly stuff yesterday, I prefer that because it disconnects you from the database stuff. When you have the database stuff in Blazor, that code block just gets way messier. So I like the API separation. So I prefer that. I haven't used Wazoo before, so that was interesting to try and pick up. I really love that I can create a dynamic deal on the server and push it to the client. That was pretty cool. If I didn't to get involved either way. Well, again, it's what are you comfortable with? What do you use? Can you be as constructive or productive using your framework and language of choice? Then fine. That's no judgment, right? That's why am I failing with my keyboard? Read only. C# is more conducive to productivity. Yeah, can't debate that, but I've also been using it for a while. Where are you going to change it to protected? So yeah, if all joking aside, if you are here and you are new to coding, if you are new to this world, don't be intimidated. Feel free to ask questions. Stream, although it might not look like it, is definitely open to newcomers as well as experienced devs. Just looking at the viewer numbers, I repeat that because I don't want to scare people away. Of course, that is only the case because I'm also used to C#. Yeah. No. Could I put something together in PHP? Yeah. Could I use Laravel now? Sadly, yeah. Not my preferred. I will be honest, having looked at .NET and the way .NET's evolved, I definitely don't like Laravel. Because when MVC was new to .NET, I actually was looking at PHP and Ruby frameworks to see what do they do, how do they work. Because again, everything's copied, right? Very little is original. If you look back, you'll see examples of some of this stuff dating back to early computing days. So we just keep building a little bit more and a little bit more and a little bit more on top. I'm a copy. Yep. We're all clones. But yeah, we just keep building ever so slightly on what was already done. And improving those patterns. So again, looking at early MVC days for .NET, right? Looked at things like PHP frameworks, Laravel, and a really nice one at that point. Whatever frameworks there were, and Ruby on Rails. Ruby on Rails was actually the one that actually settled the principles of MVC into my head. They were. It did not settle in easily, that's for certain. So, date added remains unchanged. Review date was changed. Event queued. Okay. we'll go over this one again. This is another example. This is why I'm doing this bit by bit, right? Let's fix the one test. So we know that this is within from UTC now. Probably need to change the name of that because it does not read at all correctly. I went back and forth on that as well. At some point, as much as I don't want to, I probably should just include fluent assertions because it will give me a standard way of representing these things, and I do not have to worry about this because I'm going to have to write my own if I carry on down this path, because assert doesn't read as clearly. Okay, let's run this unit test. So, when you change the review date, it should trigger an event. That is my definition. And what I need to start doing is capturing when I say I'm going to do something, I need to capture what events I expect to see. Right now, what I've been doing is I've been jamming them in there to flex the concept, right? I've been adding events that occur when things change just to flex the concept. So the events, come out, right? This one, I had some major issues with that, but, the events are being published when I create a planning item. I didn't expect that. I didn't use it. I'm not actually doing anything with it, but eventually I should be doing stuff. Right? So I need to be reviewing the impact of changes. At the very least, I should be putting things behind methods. So that's why this is being captured now. I want to make sure that I publish the event, and my unit test should verify the event is published. I started in low-level PHP and learned ASP.NET and never really looked back. The front-end transition for .NET was painful. jQuery, AngularJS, React, Razor Pages, Blazor. Crazy time trying to fit with those. What's crazy is you think the computer in its modern form has been around for less than 100 years, right? Computing as we know it now has really only existed for 40 years, right? And the technologies you're talking about have all come and gone within the last 15. Or come and gone, and some, they still exist. It's not like they've disappeared, but they've fallen in and out of popularity. So what comes next, right? Because we are constantly on a world of, I know better. I know better. And that's formed by, hey, I don't like what you're doing, or I don't like the way you're doing it, or, oh, I think I can do that differently. And what they do is they go off and do it, and then they hit the same challenges, right? And end up with the same solution, maybe. The whole mediator thing, like I've said many times, right? I didn't know that I existed, but it felt natural, so I implemented it. And then someone said, "Oh, did you know about this library?" I think it was you that actually said, "Do you know about this library?" And I was like, "Huh?" And I looked and I'm like, it does exist. Right? I was reinventing a wheel I didn't know existed. So it's those opinions. It's these opinions we get into debates and arguments over in some streams and forums, etc. that trigger, hey, I'm going to go off and write my own. Sometimes it's productive and helps people move forward. Sometimes it's just another version. But and that's why I don't have an issue with reinventing wheels. If you can understand how something is working and figure out the challenges, then you can evaluate, or you can better measure, actually, I do need that library, right? Is within from UTC now, right? If I include fluent assertions, I have a more readable form of this, and it's better tested, stronger, more resilient, more adaptable, and all those other things, right? But now I understand this challenge, right? So there's no harm in it. All parameters will be flats. OData and GraphQL. Looks like GraphQL is hitting the same issues figured out with OData. Yep. I did create my own static site generator with Blazor as the client. Yeah. It's also interesting because all concepts had limitations, right? They had technological limitations. They had design limitations. Some of them require, like, the whole shift. If you look at if I go back to when I first became a developer, right? Building a website, right? Back in the dark days before JavaScript, right? Just HTML and CSS, you put a site together. It was great. And this JavaScript thing came along. You could put all sorts of interactivity in, right? So this shift happened where we started to put more behavior into the client side and move away from the server side, right? And then like, oh, well, hold on. We need to, we're slowing things down in the client because the client isn't, so let's create this Silverlight or this Flash technology. And these technologies came along and we started putting stuff into the browser. Then we realized the limitations of them. And you try to build sites with Flash and SEO is a nightmare. You can't find the site, or you've got viruses and all sorts of vulnerabilities you're adding into the client. So then you go forward again and you start, oh, well, jQuery came along. We've now got this super fast JavaScript library that makes client-side development really quick. And you keep shifting through these cycles because the technology and the abilities of the machines working on change. And, you know, it's... So, yeah, you can look back on what has been, and you can look at other languages because they've been formed around some of those challenges. You keep reviewing, right? So there's no wrong answer to what should I use. You can be productive. I mean, if you want to go back to Macromedia Flash and try and develop something, good on you. You're not going to deploy it anywhere these days because unfortunately that technology is not deployable because most of the browsers will be like, nope. That's where I learned about tweens for the first time. Flash. Almost 30 years ago. Ouch. Okay, so enough of my long-winded rants. We're actually going to get this done today. This will be done. Okay, so challenge. Review date was changed. So I'm expecting an event to publish, and I've still got this challenge of, am I going to put my internal identifiers? Now these domain events are internal, right? It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter that they have internal identifiers because these events happen within the domain themselves. If they trigger an integration event, that integration event will not have that identifier on it, or that ID. But from a testing perspective, I now have a challenge. I hide the ID. I don't care about the ID. It's set by the database. I don't really care. So do I care about it here? Well, kinda. Right? But I have no way of setting it. Because it's hidden behind this. So what I can do here, now, one of the issues I have is, apart from all the fluff, that this is because if I call this substitute, I'm going to do it. No, it doesn't want to do it. I've got to call them. Yeah, right, remove that. So I've got to put this in, substitute call. So when I call update async, right, arg.ticket, I specify this is ticket, no, I can't. Update async. So the challenge is I can't set the ID, right? Now I could say, hey, set the ID on this result, but that would be disingenuous. It wouldn't really, it'd be just cheating the test. But I've got to realistically figure out how am I going to publish that event without modifying this design? And considering my earlier conversation about how to protect these values later on, that I am going to go through the effort of doing, my first instinct, which is this, right? If I say, okay, well, there goes to there, bar ticket equals that, then ticket.id equals ticket ID, return ticket, return ticket, right? So I can do it, right? It should pass now. But if I now protect that, which I should, because I shouldn't allow myself to change the ID of the object, right? What do I do? So I'm writing code just for the test here, but I've got to tell the story. Is this useful? Yes, absolutely it is. Could I use the identifier? Yes, absolutely I could. If I use the identifier, then even if this got published straight away as an integration event, it wouldn't reveal any internal components of the ticket system. But then when I query, I've now got to go and fetch it by an identifier rather than its ID, which I have. So what's the right way? I don't know. I know which way I'm leaning for the good of the system. But then I have to also be consistent, right? I have to make sure that I'm consistent going forward. And I think this testing style will force me to be consistent in that way, right? What I'm going to do is I'm going to remove all that, remove that, remove that. I am going to go in here and I'm going to do period ticket identifier. Identifier fire. When you look at a word and I'm not sure I'm spelling that right. Right. So does that test what I'm actually testing? Yes, it does, because it should match the identifier that I've set on my result, which is set when I actually create the ticket, right? Because again, identifier is not controlled externally anymore, it's controlled internally. If anyone disagrees with this path, by the way, I'd love to know. Right? If you are following me enough to know what I'm doing here, do you have an opinion? Right? I'd love to know if there is one. Right? So what I'm doing is I'm exposing, actually, period, identifier, date time from, date time to, private setter. Okay, so that'll break the ticket so that I know that that's got to be fixed now, right? So when I go to ticket now, this breaks because that's, right? You can see up above, I do the same thing. I pass the ID, ticket status has changed. So that is something else I want to cover. And I probably will do that next because that's the next test. Right? Now this should still pass. Okay. So again, my test has kind of forced my hand, but it's made me question my design, made me question the architecture and validate the use case, right? So does it matter that I'm pulling that identifier? No, because the identifier will be unique within the tickets. There is a constraint on there for it to be unique, so the system would crash. It can't. So there is an index, or there will be an index on it. It's not exactly slow to retrieve it by its identifier. It's just, obviously I have the ID at the point I publish the event. Wouldn't it be nice to say, yeah, this is this, but now I can't accidentally expose my ID, my internal ID, right? I have to know the ID. So yeah, that's that. So that's good to start this game. So this is the last one. Again, if you have any opinions or questions on that one, please let me know. It's definitely something where I want to make sure I'm kind of validating where I can. Okay, so read only. Yeah. Alright, expected status on there. We need our tenant and stuff. Let's change our code up. Create. So I am starting to nice. I'm starting to try and make sure that I put things like tenant identifier, user identifier first. Obviously, you can see the created by isn't there, but everything that is tenant focused, I should probably put tenant identifier as the first thing in there, because then it clearly identifies at a glance this has a tenant concern, right? Some objects won't have tenant concerns. Some objects will be global, maybe. Some objects won't have that concept, but it's at least worth trying to move towards a consistent pattern of making sure that if it's something is tenant or user or whatever aware, that the first argument in my create is the thing that it's tied to. Okay, so we should be able to run this. Oh, actually, let's do one other thing. Go in here. Make sure this extends arrange act. Detected override. Run it. Should have a fail on the date and a fail on the event. Right, date remains unchanged. Make this one to be is.within ETC now. But timespan. Okay. Should be a run. Oh, one more failure. That is the event, right? So we now have to fix this. So this is the same problem, right? So we do identifier equals my boss encounter of maintainable code. Huh? One of my probably overly strong opinions is that bool member fields are bad practice. Bool member fields. You're talking about your code or my code? There you go. Bool member fields on methods or on objects either way. Few and far between is probably the better way of having them. Singleton class with 5 booleans. They get used randomly throughout the code to make random signals. Ouch. I've experienced a lot of bad booleans. From is active -101. I think we talked about that last week, or the other day. The days are blurring. So you've got a singleton class that's basically just state and using booleans to track that state. Are they named at least? Obviously. Or is it just a dump? Oh, it's a dumping ground. Okay. It's we need to represent this. Okay, stick it in class. Random. Okay, so let's do 50-50 with the names. One is satisfied is optimal, and my favorite. Oh, if you didn't. Oh, good. Thank you very much for the bits. EF control. What is EF control? You're not using entity framework, which is the only thing that comes to mind. So not only Boolean variables, but what does is optimal mean? Either, even as a Boolean variable. What does is optimal represent? I'm just testing something. Grid identifier T from T2. I'm going to make that a pattern. Right? Congratulations. That's awful. Public period identifier equals identifier public T from to. Satisfied is also overloaded with different meanings in different places. Awesome. It's all things to all users. So I've used this pattern twice, and neither of these events are actually used. So what I'm doing right now is unnecessary optimization entirely. Right? I'm just testing to see if it's something I want to do. Right? If I'm changing one field, then triggering that event. Convert to primary constructor. Because that reads a little easier and cuts down a lot of replication. Move to another folder. Tickets, application, shared kernel, contractor. Trying to get to the point where that's kind of getting right. So it doesn't mean that breaks, but ticket status has changed. If I'm always consistent again on identifier being the thing, then that's okay. Okay. Brilliant. So I've long since tried to hold to the clean code aspect of Boolean parameters are bad, right? Again, naming matters. So I'm not considering the modern IDEs. I don't think it matters as much, right? Because if you see, if I write a method, private void does a thing. It's a string name bool is valid bool is satisfied, just a trigger, right? Then if I go to call that method, does a thing. My IntelliSense will give me what they mean. As long as I name these intelligently, right? It's kind of okay. However, this and this also have to combine properly, right? You have to make sense, right? Right. So, complete items in state, right? Or something similar, right? Maybe that means something different now, right? So complete items in state, true. But the IDE will help me out with what those trues mean, right? So that's less of a problem, but it's still an issue, right? So trying to write code that reads correctly, and Booleans make sense. Yeah. But I think we are becoming a little lazy in terms of IDEs as well, right? I am relying more and more on Copilot, which I'm kind of disappointed in, because I'm like, I'm constantly fighting. Is it actually giving me real code, or is it giving me code that it's just making up things? So, yeah. Okay, let's finish this out. I've broken the other thing now, by the way. I think. Well, I haven't, because I didn't inherit from my class yet. Okay, ticket has changed. So that should now be identifier, from status to status. The ordering of which I call these matters, right? From to, because I'm passing in. I'm taking the current one and updating the current one. Yeah, so that's fine. So this is kind of a lie as it stands. I haven't actually changed it yet. So, if this was to, well, this wouldn't trigger until I'm saving it, right? The fact that it's telling the system that this is going to happen, this wouldn't trigger. There's no real harm. But if this was real and it was real time, then I could potentially publish this event and have the status disagree. Just something to keep an eye on if you're doing sort of events. Okay, there we go. We have passed. We've passed our test. We have changed our code. We have protected some of the data within our ticket class. It is now a little bigger, but it is a little bit more readable. Let's go and change this to be a field was changed date time. What? So just field has changed. Uh-oh. Oh, nice. You can do that in classes now. Huh. I did not realize you could do that. You can get rid of the curly brace. Nice. That just becomes identifier. That test should still pass. There we go. I didn't actually realize you could do that on. That's sort of like a funny usage for that for sure. I didn't realize you could. I did it there as well. Huh. I always thought you had to have the curly braces. That's a probably a side effect of introducing records, because records don't need implementation, right? That's probably come as a side effect because it's all class anyway. Neat. I learned 2 new things here. Productive day. I'll take it. Okay, so this is add Jones. Good evening. 2 p.m. for you. I hope it's not. I hope you're not considering that evening. C# has so many unnecessary cool features. But again, I think that is a side effect, right? That is definitely a side effect of records being introduced, and it's just there's no harm in it. I haven't seen that before. It's like the UTF-8 encoding yesterday. Whenever I did that, that baffled me. Putting UF8 or whatever it is after the string to make it UTF-8 encoded was kind of like, oh, okay. Missing columns, script. U8, that's one. Great. Okay. Before we go ahead with this one, thoughts. I called the events was changed. I called this abstract class field has changed. Do I change my event names to be has, or do I make this field was changed? Grammatically, was probably more appropriate because it was field was changed from to, right? That's the way it's reading there. And that's the intention. Right? So from an API perspective, field was changed from to, but field has changed from to. I think was. Yeah, I think I'm going to change it to was. Field was changed. Yeah, that feels better. Okay. Introduce base class for publishing field. Field semantics. Yeah. Changes. Okay. Actually, I'm going to change this one first. This one. Right. Pick it. Move. Move to private constructor. Or just field change. Yeah. Because the tense does not matter. Okay. Updated. Add ticket to support. New. That's it. Create. That's interesting. So I actually did have review date was changed and ticket status has changed. So I was inconsistent there. When I refactored the base event now, it realized and changed ticket status was changed for me. I was looking earlier how you did the API, interesting minimal API library. How did you come about that? fast endpoints. So I was using Ardalis endpoints because I like endpoints as a concept, right? I don't like controllers. I definitely don't like minimal API in its current form. Yeah. And time. I was in Rambling Geeks Discord actually, and Michael Jolly, a bald bearded builder who hasn't streamed in a long time. He did an article on minimal APIs. Bald bearded builder. You should find it this way. Choosing between controllers and minimal API, right? Part of the Advent code, right? Yeah, that's why. And I saw fast endpoints. I was like, oh, have you looked at Ardalis's endpoints implementation? And he hadn't. But then he came back and said, Ardalis has replaced his endpoints implementation with fast endpoints in the latest eShop on Web stuff. So that's what got me onto that. So yeah, it's pretty nice. Ardalis's version was a little simpler from a UI perspective because it actually just sat on top of controllers. Not from a UI, from a usability, it sat on top of controllers, so there was no weird extension methods and internal methods to use. So you could just use attributes the same way you could with a controller. This seems to be a little quicker, a little bit smoother, and its integration is kind of more what's the word? I can't see. I can't think about the word. I think it's just deeper inside of the ASP.NET framework. So yeah, fast endpoints is the one that's used there, and it is pretty nice. It also tells you when it registers. It registers all the controllers up front, so all the endpoints. So in your startup, it will actually tell you, hey, it took 300 milliseconds to register 8 endpoints, whatever. You can see the benchmarks on it, etc. So in general, looks like it's on par with minimal APIs. A little less memory used in its base form. I haven't looked beyond, so at least they're being honest about what it can do. But I'd say endpoints of them. Right. By the way, I noticed you're being kind of inconsistent in the what thing, or I think it is inconsistent. Do you want issues? Inconsistent in what form? In the style? Or the coding? Your app services, some use the result API and some don't. I didn't realize I'd done that. Some of it is, but that doesn't sound like that is deliberately done. That's more accidental and kind of the entire goal there is to kind of throw code at it and then look back on, say, hey, look, here's how we refactor this, here's how we change this around, here's some things we can implement. Because right now it's not using CQRS. Here's an application that might look more close to what a regular user's doing. Here's how we can do some refactoring and add some unit tests in as we go. So some token unit tests in there, but they are just literally there just to pad it out a little bit. So yeah. But yeah, that's I mean, add some issues if you want to, but we'll yeah. Apex, thank you very much for the look. I'm about to finish up here myself, I think. Yeah. So if you haven't looked at it yet, by the way, the Discord I have coding challenge, we'll be doing that next Friday. So the coding challenge is, there's a site, and it's linked to from those, from the poll. That I've picked 3 random challenges. Well, random in that I kind of scrolled through, looked at something and said, hey, that looks interesting. There we go. Pull that one. So there's 3 there. If you're interested, next Friday, I'll be doing that coding challenge on stream. I have a bit more time this Friday, so I don't have to end the stream for work. So if you're interested in doing that, feel free. Also, if you're new to the stream and you want to hang out and ask more questions about what we've done on stream, what we will be doing, asking there. Next Friday, the 2nd of February. Yes, February is almost here. So, yeah, I'll be doing that coding challenge. So the votes currently are, there's only 2 votes in there, so feel free, hop in there, have a look, see what the challenges are. And the idea of them is also, if you want to do the challenge as well and contribute, or even, hey, here's my solution versus your solution. Okay, I might actually miss that. Not sure I feel comfortable pulling up a Twitch stream on my 2nd day on the new job. I'll forgive you. It's fine. Yeah, I get it. Going fast, right? Global warming is a thing. You think time acceleration might be a thing too? The older you get, I think it does accelerate. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Every passing year becomes like 5 minutes shorter. No. Your vote still counts. The votes count. Right? So I normally pick it the day before or the morning of. I'd go in completely unprepared so that if you have any questions or thoughts on what I'm doing, everything's real time, and therefore I'm not just, coming out with a pre-prepared solution and saying, oh, look at me, how smart am I? No. Warts and all, struggle, fail, doesn't matter. And the repository will be put in the TBD Friends, GitHub, later so that anyone can go and review it. And the PR, like Thorolf did on the last one, implementing some smoother read writes against the sockets. Yeah, as always, everything will be up on YouTube as well. Yeah, that is that. Okay. Fortunately, though, I do have to end. If only there were more dev streamers this time of the day. So, Captain Coda. Have I seen Captain Coda before? The Captain Coda. I have not. What Captain Coda is doing .NET, C#, so it is relevant. Creating educational programming projects, that's perfect. So yeah, we're going right over there. I do have to run, so I will not actually speak, so if someone could make my apologies for me, that would be ideal. I might have to go and run 2 dogs out. So, yeah, they'll appreciate C# developers dropping in. So anyway, I will be back tomorrow. We'll do more on this. I'm going to do some planning this evening and get some more stories planned and prepped. We'll be working on promoting from tickets to planning items tomorrow. Yeah, and so that is where it lies. Thank you very much for joining me. Again, check out the Discord if you haven't. The YouTube videos are all up there. And yeah, take care. Have a great rest of your day. Thank you very much. And see you again soon. Have a great day.